The chance discovery of a baby hare, a leveret that had been separated from its mother, was to change Chloe Dalton's life. Rescuing it, she put her entire home at its disposal to ensure its survival, balancing her frenetic job advising foreign secretaries and Hollywood A-listers with a new appreciation of nature.
I really felt that she never belonged to me. It was just an instinct that she belonged to the wild, and that my job was to prepare her for her return to the wild. I found a very helpful website that gave some tips about how to look after leverets, and it did suggest keeping a leveret inside a cage. And I did this for a couple of nights and realised that the animal seemed to me to be extremely distressed. After literally 1 or 2 nights, I removed the cage. That was it. I opened the doors of the house, and this animal was free to roam from the very beginning. And I think that became the key of the relationship. She was always free to roam the house and garden, and at night I would hear her paws on the carpet under my bed as she would sort of roam around. In the daytime she would stretch out in my study across the entrance to the room and sleep there all day while I worked. I was looking at her, watching her in these first couple of months, thinking, okay, soon she will be strong enough to leave. And then one day she took the decision out of my hands by leaping over the garden wall. And I felt a real sense of grief about it, actually, much more than I expected, because animals hadn't been part of my life. I worked in politics. You know, in the book, I write about the effect that she had on me and how she changed my perceptions, but I thought she was gone. And she astonished me by coming back over the wall a couple of hours later, and that became our new rhythm, that she would disappear into the wild at night. In the daytime, she'd come back and sleep in the house.
And yet she did change you. You know, this was the pandemic. You'd been kind of ripped out of your normal world, Westminster, foreign policy, you know, on and off planes the whole time. You know, this was a million miles away from this natural world and this gift from the natural world. So how did that change your understanding of nature and change you?
I didn't really think of it as an obsession because I was doing all my normal work. For instance, after the fall of Kabul and the return of the Taliban, you know, a big focus of my work was what was happening to women in Afghanistan. And I'd be having those phone calls and meetings, and the leveret would be sort of scurrying around in the room or sleeping in the room. So it was more the coexistence. And that, for me, was the beauty of the experience. But when I began to study hares and read more about them, to realise that their numbers have plummeted by 80%, that in large parts of the country that you don't see them at all, that they suffered a lot despite commitments by successive governments. There is the hare is the only game creature that you can shoot at any time of the year in England and Wales. There's no close season as there is in Scotland.
When they're breeding?
Yes, which means you can shoot hares while they're breeding, and if a leveret is orphaned, they don't survive.
I mean, it's incredible, really, because hares having such short lifespans in the wild, and yet this is now, she's 3.5 years old.
The story has sort of broadened, you know, has had many leverets, and her leverets have had leverets, and so now I have many more hares coming into the garden.
And even giving birth to her leverets in your house.
Yes, this was the most extraordinary thing, that the demonstration of the trust in the relationship. It just turned out that the decision not to cage her and to leave her free was probably the right decision, because she then chose, as I describe in the book, to actually give birth to leverets not only in the house, but in my office, behind the curtain at the desk where I sit every single day. And there were various days where I would have the mother hare stretched out in one corner of the house, and another hare lying on a sofa, and a third on a windowsill. And that was during the period of writing the book. So I would have moments where I'd just stop and look around and just think, I am so lucky. It really speaks to the sort of beauty in the commonplace. I think I had always assumed that I had to sort of travel and go far overseas and be engaged in these big issues to find interest and importance and purpose in terms of what I was doing. And I really learnt that actually often the most beautiful things are just around the corner. And also that no matter how dark and difficult the times are, and sometimes at moments when we look internationally it does feel very dark, there is hope and renewal in nature. There is a cycle, and as I've seen in the life story of this hare, and I find that a real source of hope, and that's again something I wanted to share with people through the book.